Welcome, everybody, to October in AI, the Insider's Briefing. This is a session that I run every month, covering the big stories in AI from the last, in this case, 31 days. I am Heather. I founded the AI Edit in September because I was constantly being asked questions about AI, and the most common question I was getting was, where do I learn more about AI? And I didn't have a good answer because even the courses and the books that I absolutely loved at the time became out of date really quickly. And to keep up to date by following the news or following social media is really hard at the moment because we've all seen the tsunami of AI slop. And because a lot of influencers, investors, and tech companies have so much to gain from getting us all to buy into the AI hype. So it's very hard for busy people like you with lives to live to disentangle what matters and to stay up to date, to build your AI skills and to understand how AI might impact your life, your work, your family. So that is the problem that the AI edit is designed to address. Every session is curated, high quality, live sessions, always delivered live so that it is always up to date. And my mission is to help people like you become top 1% AI thinkers and users in less than 3 hours a month. So you can become a member of the AI Edit for £20 a month, where you get access to all of my sessions, including my session recordings. I'm just going to share my screen now so that you can see. Can everybody see my screen? Great. So as a member, you get access to all of my sessions, or you can book my sessions as one-off. So these are my next 6 sessions. Tomorrow we've got Master AI Search. Next week, 2 weeks, we've got Become a ChatGPT Super User. So all of these sessions, you can book just that session if you think it's relevant to you. And some of them are charged and some of them are free. So, on to today's session. This session is being recorded, but it's only me that's being recorded. And at the end, we will have time for a chat if anybody wants to stick around, and nothing will be recorded there. So you are not being recorded, just me. And we've got 30 minutes to go through the biggest AI stories from October 2025. What happened, why it matters, what the implications might be for you, and maybe a little bit of what we're not being told. So at the end, as I said, my last session was just 30 minutes and we finished, and the feedback was people wanted to ask questions, they wanted to stick around, they wanted to discuss these news stories. So we're going to do that at the end of the session today for anybody who wants to stick around. So October was a massive month in AI, and I can't wait to take you through all of the big things that happened. And we're going to start with AI web browsers. So on the 21st of October, OpenAI launched the Atlas browser, which is a new web browser that enables ChatGPT to be embedded directly into your browsing experience. So as a user of Atlas, you can summarize, you can edit, you can chat with your own open tabs through a sidebar in the right-hand corner. And agent mode, which is a previous feature of ChatGPT, can take this even further, allowing ChatGPT to control the interface, move the cursor, fill out forms, narrate actions in real time. And this is really an early step in taking your chatbot outside of ChatGPT. So if you haven't been invited to download Atlas within your ChatGPT interface, that is because it's only available on Mac and it's only available to paid ChatGPT users. So if you're using Plus, Pro, or Business and you're using a Mac, you would have had that invitation. It's going to roll out beyond that further soon. But that is significant because if people want this feature, they have to pay. And 95% of ChatGPT's 800 million users are on the free account. So really only a few people have had a glimpse of Atlas Browser. So OpenAI says that a browser built with ChatGPT takes us closer to a true super assistant that understands your world and helps you achieve your goals. Right. Okay. So that is the marketing promise, but there's also been a lot of criticism. So critics have argued that Atlas doesn't clearly solve any problem that needs solving. And some have called it just a really weird way of interacting with the web and AI at the same time. And I'm sure this is just a stepping stone to what's to come. The other big criticism is that it's collecting data. We all know that AI companies are absolutely starving for data. And so this is another way for OpenAI to collect more data on you. What are you doing on the web? How do you interact with the web? And that's very, very useful to OpenAI. And then there's the huge problem, which is that AI browsers, a lot of cybersecurity experts have said that AI browsers are extremely easy to hack via prompt injection attacks. And if you don't know what a prompt injection attack is, I'm not going to take you through that now, but I do have a separate video that I will send to you after the session. So many experts just believe that these AI browsers are too risky. And Atlas isn't the first AI browser. Perplexity, which is the AI search tool, released Comet, its AI browser, back in July. And Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome have LLM features built into them, although they're not actual AI browsers. But this represents a strategic move for OpenAI because by building its own browser, it's kind of starting to own its own distribution rather than having to rely on Microsoft and Google. Right. So I'm going to move on to the next story, which is the AI application spending report, where startup dollars really go. So in early October, Andreessen Horowitz, which is the biggest VC firm in the world, released its AI application spending report. So the report was done in partnership with a company called Mercury, which is like a bank, but it's not a bank. It's a fintech company that provides banking services specifically to tech startups. So Mercury is very clear that it works primarily with startups, primarily with tech startups. And it's one of Andreessen Horowitz's portfolio companies, which is significant. So the report basically summarizes some data. They took the transaction data from over 200,000 Mercury customers, startups, remember, and primarily based in the US. You can access Mercury in the US and then some tax havens like Jersey, the Bahamas, etc. So it took transaction data from these 200,000 startups and they analyzed it and they looked for spending on AI tools. And what they did was they ranked, and I'm just going to increase the size of this. They ranked the top 50 AI native applications that those 200,000 startups are paying for, right? And I don't actually agree that all of these are AI native. I don't think Notion or Canva or Grammarly are AI native. But anyway, this is what they did. And of course, we had OpenAI and Anthropic topping the list. And third on the list is important, it's Replit. And there's a reason that that's important. So this list showed AI tools like OpenAI, Anthropic, followed by coding tools, meeting support, creative tools. So on the surface, this looks like a measure of AI adoption. And the media, especially the tech media, just ran with that. They were like, these are the tools that are being used. If you're starting to use AI tools, there's urgency around it, kind of creating this FOMO that tech startups are using these tools. I have a few issues with this. Partly one that only 10% of tech startups actually survive long term. So this isn't necessarily an indication of what other businesses are doing. But if you look below the surface, and if you look at the very bottom of this table, you can see some real fine print there. I think that this is more of a carefully orchestrated PR play by a VC firm with massive vested interest in driving AI hype. So you might have seen headlines about businesses increasing their use of AI, but that's not what the report was about. It simply ranks these tools according to spending, but it doesn't tell us how much spending or whether spending has increased or decreased. And secondly, 5 of the 50 companies on this list are themselves Andreessen Horowitz portfolio companies. And not only that, 2 of those 5 companies are in the midst of scandals that are almost certainly impacting their sales. So we have Otter AI, which is the subject of a class action lawsuit in California. I'll share a post on that after the session. And then we have Replit, which is the third over here, the vibe coding app that made headlines in the summer because in one instance it just completely overrode its instructions, deleted an entire production database, and then it justified it by saying, "Sorry, I panicked." So it's a bit concerning that this just turned into TechCrunch Register Business Insider news. Our next story is the statement on superintelligence, which is an open letter released by the Future of Life Institute and signed by over 700 influential figures, including AI scientists, Nobel laureates, tech founders, faith leaders, public officials, will.i.am, and Harry and Meghan. I don't know. But the letter calls for a global prohibition on the development of superintelligent AI, which is basically defined as artificial intelligence that can surpass human performance on all useful cognitive tasks. So what these signatories of this letter wanted was to have a moratorium on this until there's both broad scientific consensus that it can be made safe and controllable and strong public support for its development. So this position has been prompted by concern that superintelligent systems could soon emerge and cause major risks like economic disruption, erosion of freedoms, national security threats, and even human extinction. So the letter has sparked a lot of debate and public interest, and polls that have been taken around this letter have shown strong support for regulatory oversight. But it hasn't had an impact when it comes to the actual regulators and the tech companies yet. I mean, this was only in the last 2 weeks. So the AI companies have said that they prefer ongoing research and managed progress. And regulators like the US Federal Trade Commission have said that they acknowledge the concerns, but they want to enforce existing laws rather than a global ban. So you can sign the letter yourself. I'm going to send it out in the follow-up email. You can sign the letter yourself. But of course, a moratorium has to be applied globally for it to work. You can't have a moratorium in the US and Europe, but not in China, right? So it's very hard to apply anything globally. But the letter has raised quite a lot of awareness. Right. Now we are moving on to Amazon, which announced plans last week to cut around 14,000 jobs worldwide. And this was according to an internal memo from Beth Galetti, who is the Senior Vice President of People Experience and Technology. So the statement didn't actually offer many reasons for the details on the reasons behind the reduction, and they didn't say who, when, or where. Or that they did say that it was going to be blue collar workers, but and of course, Amazon's financial performance has been really strong, and Jeff Bezos had a very extravagant wedding in where he hired out the whole of Venice in August. So it's created a bit of bad PR for Amazon. But Amazon overhired massively in the pandemic. They hired hundreds of thousands of new people. And part of that could be right sizing as a response to the economic slowdown since in the last couple of years. But she does reference in this letter AI-driven efficiency, which has fueled some speculation that automation is playing a role in the cuts. And Amazon hasn't confirmed this, but the media has gone crazy. So we've effectively had 14,000 people are being replaced by robots. That's been the story, which I think is actually more nuanced, but that's been the big story. Amazon is not the only company announcing layoffs, right? Meta has also announced that it's cutting around 600 jobs from its artificial intelligence research division. So this division is called FAIR, the Fundamental AI Research Lab. And Meta went on a very aggressive hiring spree in the spring and the summer. And now it's reorganizing its superintelligence unit, which employs thousands of people. But Zuckerberg says they want to be a little bit more focused. So FAIR has led Meta's foundational AI work, but it hasn't delivered amazing results. And its Vibes video app was widely panned. The restructuring was announced a couple of weeks ago, and then last week, Meta's stock fell 11% because investors are a little bit worried about the company's plans to ramp up AI spending. So there's this recalibration happening in Meta from costly research towards applied AI projects that are maybe expected to deliver faster commercial payback, and which is very significant, right? Because AI companies have raised a huge amount of money and investors want returns. And the issue with Meta is that for all its investment in AI, the vast majority of Meta's revenue comes from social media ads. So it's not seeing any returns yet on its AI investment. And this recalibration is a sign of that, I think. On to OpenAI. So speaking of money, last week, OpenAI completed its long-awaited recapitalization, making the formal transition from a non-profit to a public benefit corporation. I had never heard of a public benefit corporation, but this is a for-profit entity that is legally required to consider societal benefit alongside shareholder value. Do we trust OpenAI to do this is the question. So the change basically restructures its ownership and cements its new agreement with Microsoft, which now holds about 27% of the for-profit arm. So the deal valued OpenAI at $500 billion. And the shift, which I think makes it the most valuable private company in the world. So this shift is the end of a very painful years-long process because OpenAI launched in 2015 as a non-profit, and then it kind of realized that non-profits can't raise capital very easily because investors want returns and non-profits don't deliver returns. So OpenAI had to go through this very painful and very, very complex restructuring, particularly as it scales its infrastructure. So running frontier AI models is capital intensive, and the nonprofit model could not sustain it. Now, speaking of a legal entity that is required to consider societal benefit alongside shareholder value, we have the mental health story announcement from OpenAI last week. So OpenAI was facing a wrongful death lawsuit recently after a teenager very tragically committed suicide after a very, very disturbing conversation with ChatGPT. And OpenAI now reports that it's updated and improved ChatGPT so that ChatGPT can more reliably recognize signs of distress, respond with care, and guide people toward real-world support, which sounds really good. And the story last week was supposed to, I think, position OpenAI as caring and people-first champions, protecting mental health and suicide prevention. That is not how the story was received because we had some numbers. OpenAI released some numbers, right? So here are some numbers that OpenAI released as part of this. Um, so buried in the report was this 0.07% figure. Basically, they're saying 0.07% of users active in any given week indicate possible signs of mental health emergencies related to psychosis or mania. Now, the media took this and extrapolated it because there are 800 million weekly users of OpenAI and took this, the media stories were all about 500,000 mental health crises that OpenAI is dealing with every week, or 1.2 million conversations about suicide based on this figure over here. So 0.15% of users active in a given week have conversations that include specific indicators of potential suicide planning or intent. So the media took this to represent a huge scale of the problem, which is, of course, very, very concerning. And I found that this report is actually very vague because what OpenAI is saying is that we are reducing responses that fall short of our desired behavior by 65 to 80%. But we don't know what that means. Like, what 65 to 80% of what? Like, were there hundreds of thousands? Were there millions of responses falling short of their desired behavior before? So this feels more like a PR story than an actual move to address mental health issues. So we're still on OpenAI. So as we all know, in September, OpenAI released Sora, which was its text to video tool. And Sora was downloaded over 1 million times in less than 5 days when it was released in October, which makes its adoption faster than ChatGPT when it was released in 2022. I think it took a month to get to 1 million downloads. But this is even more remarkable. It's only available in North America and it's invitation only. So Sora has topped the Apple App Store very, very quickly, but it hasn't come without controversy. We've seen Sora generated clips depicting deceased public figures, including Robin Williams, Michael Jackson, Tupac Shakur, and that has sparked backlash from families and artists. And OpenAI defended this on free speech grounds, but it says recently deceased individuals or the families of recently deceased individuals can request removal, but there's no indication of what they actually mean by recently deceased. And Sam Altman said on his blog that OpenAI is now adapting its policies when it comes to Sora, promising greater control for rights holders and possible revenue sharing, because there has been this concern about copyright. And speaking of copyright, this is a great story that almost everyone seems to have missed. The FT ran this story in October about OpenAI and Anthropic struggling to secure insurance because underwriters just cannot assess the risks of AI. So OpenAI and Anthropic are having to set aside investor funds to insure them against whatever lawsuits come their way, which I think is quite a significant story. On to Nvidia, which in July became the first company to reach a $4 trillion market cap, while last week it became the first company to reach a $5 trillion valuation, now worth more than the entire German economy. And this was following a US-China trade truce, which revived some optimism about future chip sales in China. So Nvidia's rise has been absolutely huge. It now supplies 90% of the world's AI chips and makes up over 8% of the S&P 500. The big question is this sustainable? That is a very big question, and everyone who's talking of a bubble is referring to this in particular. Final story, unless we have time for Claude skills, is on this Neo Home Robot. You can now pre-order the Neo Domestic Robot for just $20,000. This is a humanoid robot that can help you with household chores. And it was released by 1X last week, and you can potentially get it on subscription. This robot is 5 foot 6 inches and weighs 66 pounds, and it can lift 154 pounds. Can connect itself to a charger when it's running low on battery. Its hands are waterproof, so it can run the dishwasher. And its goal, the 1X's goal was to produce a robot that can do all of your household chores autonomously. At the moment, all it seems to be able to do is open a door and put away dishes, and that takes a very, very long time. It's a little bit creepy because most of what it can do, it cannot do on its own. So it needs to be controlled by an experienced teleoperator. So through those little eyes are cameras that can see everything that Neo can see, and somewhere in a center owned by 1X, somewhere there is somebody controlling the robot. So obviously the privacy concerns are huge because it'll be walking around your house. And yes, there are some guardrails around this, but they don't make me feel any more comfortable. And anybody who starts using this robot will basically be providing the company behind it, 1X, with data. So if you're an early adopter, you're going to be giving 1X loads of data so that it can learn to improve this domestic robot, and so that it can make better robots in the future. But this is the very first in the humanoid robots revolution. I think it's a little bit creepy, but and of course it doesn't really work, but it is the very first robot of its kind. Final story is Anthropic released Claude skills last week, which they're calling them agent skills. I think it's a bit of a hybrid between agents and automations. These are custom tools introduced by Anthropic to let users extend Claude's AI capabilities by connecting it to external data or actions. So it's basically like designing your own plugin and explaining to Claude how to do specific tasks so that Claude can call upon those tasks when you need them. So you might teach Claude how to do a presentation in your specific format, using your colors, using your fonts, using the way you like to do it. And then every time you need to do a presentation, Claude can just call upon that skill. So it's like a mini agent, but less risky. And in December, I'm going to do a deep dive on Claude skills, teaching you how to use them. Right, so we are at the 30-minute mark. Well, actually, we're at 29 minutes. And so that is the end of today's insider briefing. I hope you found it useful. I had so much fun going down rabbit holes to prepare it. This was a free session, and I would love to ask for your support as I build the AI edit. The ways you can support me: spread the word. It's free to spread the word. Please tell your friends, family, colleagues about my sessions. Subscribe to my YouTube and my Substack, both called The Humans in the Loop, and share the content with anyone who might find it useful. Join the AI edit, or book a session. I would really appreciate that. So everything I do here exists to help you stay informed, confident, and keep ahead in an AI-driven world.